This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
Whenever I'm preaching on Ash Wednesday, because the gospel is pretty much the same all the time on Ash Wednesdays, I'm always mindful that when it says, don't get excited about wearing long flowing robes so that people see how wonderful your robes are. And those of us up here are the only ones in the room. And then it reminds us that the rewards, there's an awful lot of energy about rewards in the gospel today. And it's clear that Jesus is talking to people who are part of a culture that very, very much is into either things are done because of either shame or reward. And so if you do something wrong, that shames you and your people. And if you do something good, that accrues reward to you and to your family and your kin. It seems odd to be doing anything of spiritual value for a reward. And so Jesus is recasting it. It's not a reward for your clan or your kin. It's a reward that puts you in good stead with God who is in heaven. And so we're invited to do things for a different reason. And I'm going to do something different from other Ash Wednesday services. And I've got three hand gestures that I want to preach about. And you can take these home with you. All of you who have hands with you, you can take them home with you. The first comes from the reading from Isaiah, where it talks about not making an angry fist. There's two of these that are ones you're not going to want to emulate, by the way. The scripture is quite clear that we are not to be making fists. So one of the fists is an angry fist. It is a fist of judgment. It is a fist of blame. It's a fist that is cursing at someone because obviously they're to blame for whatever ill has befallen me. That same fist is also condemned in other places in the Hebrew Scripture, because when you make a fist to someone who comes to your door seeking help, or when you encounter someone on the street, today we had Well in the Desert here, with many people who are challenged for food, many of them homeless. When you make a fist and you say, there's nothing here for you, it is one of the very hateful, judgmental kinds of things we can do. The next gesture is even worse. And the next gesture is pointing a finger. This reading from Isaiah says, don't be pointing your finger. If you really want God to hear you, you've got to give up the pointing of the finger at other people. And you've got to pay more attention to what you're doing. And if you think about it, how do you feel when somebody points a finger at you? I can tell you that among preachers here at St. Paul's, some of the worst feedback I've ever received from preachers, never me, of course, the worst feedback I've ever received from preachers is if somebody was pointing in their sermon. And even though they're not really pointing at you, people really take pointing very hard. Because pointing is, again, it's about judgment. It's about a sense that I know what's right, and you need to figure that out, and you need to do what I'm telling you to do. Isaiah says, give up the pointing of the finger. Now, the next gesture is the one that is desired. And that is if making a fist or pointing at someone is judgmental and hateful, opening your hand is one of the most gracious and unjudgmental things that you can do. Quite often here at St. Paul's, when the clergy say, "The Lord be with you," the congregation is invited to respond, "and also with you," modeling back and forth this openness and graciousness and welcome. The important part about this is that when we have our hands out like this, we're expressing essentially vulnerability. It's the opposite of judgment. It's not saying, "I know what's right and you need to live up to my expectations." It's kind of saying, here we are together. Welcome. And when we say this in the liturgy, the idea that it would be back and forth is a sign that we're all in this together. So I'm sure that you can glean all sorts of things that would be part of a traditional Lenten discipline or an Ash Wednesday discipline from all of the scriptures that were read today. But I'd like you to take those 3 hand gestures home with you. No angry fists, no closing of your hand to those who are in need, whether it's food or a hug. No finger pointing of any finger at anybody. But be welcoming and invite those whom you encounter to know that you are open and vulnerable. And I believe that if we spend more time with this hand gesture and less with the others, we will be building that reward in heaven that Jesus invited his disciples to seek after. Amen.